Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing good and all is well. Today's chat is going to be about a 3 foot tall doll that is said to be one of the most demonic toys of all. Now, one would think no way a toy could be so demonic. I mean, a toy with such vibrant red hair, the most adorable little triangle nose, and the cutest little dress. It could never be demonic, right? And those who think it is must be crazy. I mean, no way a doll could do anything evil. I mean, it's just a toy, right? Well, in this case, naysayers may want to reconsider because the 3 foot tall, adorable little doll I'm talking about is none other than Miss Annabelle. And with that being said, let's chat. Now, before we talk about Annabelle, we must first talk about the Warrens. Ed and Lorraine Warren, to be exact. Now, Ed, or Edward Warren, he was born on September the 7th, 1926 in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And he was born to a Catholic family. Now, when Ed was a child, he had several paranormal experiences. He witnessed unexplained phenomena like doors opening and closing on their own, and he once witnessed a flicker of light transform into the apparition of his deceased landlady. Now, it's as if he had a close spiritual connection with the other world ever since birth. And his wife, Lorraine, well, she wasn't far behind. Lorraine was born January the 31st, 1927, and she too began noticing her connection to the spiritual world at a very young age. Now, when Lorraine was around about 9 years old, she began to notice her clairvoyant abilities and began seeing auras around people. And when Ed was around about 16 years old, he worked as an usher at the Colonial Theater. And, of course, this is where he met his loving wife, Miss Lorraine. Now, the two, they began dating, and he and Lorraine married in 1945. And later on, after their union, Ed, he became known as a self-taught and self-professed demonologist, while Lorraine professed to be a clairvoyant light trance medium. And in around about 1952, Ed and Lorraine founded the New England Society for Psychic Research, or the NESPR. The NESPR is the oldest ghost hunting group in New England. Now, Ed and Lorraine, they worked over 10,000 investigations, and they became the most famous paranormal investigative couple of all times. And of course, we all know Ed and Lorraine. I mean, we know them from the famous movies such as The Conjuring, Amityville Horror, Annabelle, and many others. And throughout the years, Ed and Lorraine, they collected many artifacts from their investigations. And these were not any artifacts. These were artifacts that are said to be possessed or have severe demonic presence. Now, the artifacts they collected, they're currently, present day, they're housed at the Warrens Occult Museum. And recently, very recently, one of those artifacts was removed from the museum and taken on a world tour. Now, let that sink in. Let me just repeat it. One of the artifacts which Ed and Lorraine deemed to be demonic was taken from their occult museum, and this artifact is now on a world tour. Yes, you heard me correctly. Now, that artifact that was removed was none other than Miss Annabelle. And since Annabelle has been removed, strange phenomena has occurred in some of the places that she has visited. But before we get into that, let's talk a little more about Miss Annabelle. In 1970, a mother purchased Annabelle from a hobby store as a birthday present for her daughter named Donna. Now, she bought the 3 foot tall, Raggedy Ann doll, because many don't know the real Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann doll. Raggedy Ann and Andy, she's not the porcelain thing we see in the movies. But she bought that 3 foot tall Raggedy Ann doll thinking it would be the perfect birthday gift for her daughter. And her daughter was also getting ready to graduate from college with a nursing degree. Now, Donna, her mother gave her the present, and she took the cute little Raggedy Ann doll to her apartment that she shared with a roommate that was named Angie. And she placed the doll on her bed as decoration. And when she placed the doll on the bed, she didn't really think much more of it. But of course, Annabelle, she had other things in mind. And after a few days of being within Donna's home that she shared with her roommate Angie, who was also, they were living in an apartment at the time. But after a few days of Annabelle being within the home, Donna and Angie began noticing how creepy and strange Annabelle was. Annabelle, she began to move on her own. And at first, she would only move a little, by simply just changing positions or something like that. But as the days passed, she began to move more and more throughout the house. And her movements, they became more noticeable. Some days when Donna and Angie came home from work, Annabelle would be in a completely different room other than the one they left her in. Not only did Annabelle move from room to room on her own, she would sometimes be found sitting upright. Sometimes her arms would be folded. Sometimes she would be spotty and have her legs crossed. And sometimes Annabelle would even be standing once they arrived in the home. Now, I don't know about y'all, but the first time Annabelle moved, she would have been returned to the hobby store on the first thing smoking. But that's just me. But let's go on continue. Now, several times Donna would leave Annabelle. She would leave her on the couch. And when she returned home from work and all of that good stuff, Annabelle wouldn't be on the couch. She would be within Donna's bedroom on the bed with the door closed. Creepy, right? But it gets even creepier. Because not only did Annabelle move, she could also write. About a month after Annabelle was brought into the home, she began to write messages on parchment paper. The messages read, "Help Lou, help us." And the handwriting, it appeared to be the handwriting of a small child. But the messages, they weren't the creepiest part. The creepiest part of the whole situation was the way the messages were written and what they were written on. Now, the messages, they were written on parchment paper. But the ladies, they never kept any parchment paper in the home. They had no idea where the parchment paper came from. It's very creepy, right? I just want to make sure that we all on the same page. But it gets even creepier. When Donna came home one night, she noticed Annabelle had moved again. Annabelle was on her bed, which is typical, but what she saw next was far from it. Donna began feeling a sense of fear, like, hey, heart's pounding, something just doesn't feel right. And she had never felt this before. And when she saw Annabelle on her bed with her heart pounding, she decided to walk closer to the doll. Now, although she was scared, Donna still had the courage to walk over and inspect Annabelle. But while inspecting Annabelle, Donna saw what looked like blood droppings on the back of Annabelle's hands and on her chest. Now, the red stains, they appeared to come out of nowhere. It's as if when she was walking up, they were appearing. And this horrifying experience, of course, it freaked Donna out. And this is what made her and her roommate, Angie, seek the expert advice. Now, the ladies, they were desperate for help at this time. So they went ahead and contacted a medium so that way they could do a seance. Now, this seance, it reveals some information because this is where Donna and Angie, they met the spirit of Annabelle Higgins. Or did they? But Annabelle Higgins was a young girl that resided on the property in which Donna and Angie lived before the apartment building was built. And this was during what was said to be happy times. And Annabelle was a 7-year-old girl whose lifeless body was found in the field where the apartment building now stands. Now let's talk about how eerie that is. Now remember, Annabelle was a gift from Donna's mom. It was a gift that Donna's mom bought from the hobby store. And Donna's mom, she lives in a completely different area. And Annabelle suddenly and coincidentally wound up with her daughter who lives on the grounds where the real Annabelle Higgins' lifeless 7-year-old body was found. Now that's exactly why I said, as soon as Annabelle head moved or she flinched or anything weird happened, she would have been on the first thing smoking on her way back to the hobby store. That's exactly why I said that. Now, during the session with the medium, Annabelle's spirit made it clear that she felt comfortable with Donna and Angie, and she wanted to stay with them and be loved. Huh? Come on, baby, and go on to the light. Now, that's what I would have had said to Annabelle. I mean, during this seance, I'm sorry, but you got me messed up. Annabelle, baby, you got to go on into the light, boo. Now, that would have been my sentiments, but that was not Donna's. Donna isn't me. Donna, she felt sorry for the little spirit. And she gave her permission, or she gave the spirit permission, rather, to inhibit the doll and stay with them. However, Donna and everyone else was soon to find out that Annabelle was not what they thought. She was not what she appeared to be. And Annabelle was no ordinary case, nor was she a regular doll. Now, they kept Annabelle under the pretenses that she was possessed by the spirit of this sweet little 7-year-old girl. But more things began to occur. Donna and Angie, they had a friend named Lou. Lou. Does that name sound familiar? Remember the creepy messages? The creepy messages wrote on a parchment paper. Remember, one of them said, "Help Lou." Lou was a friend of Donna and Angie who had been around since they first got Annabelle. Now, Lou, he never really cared for Annabelle, and he never really liked her. And he always said that the doll was evil and they should get rid of it. They probably should listen to Lou. But Donna, she was very fond of the doll. She had received it from her mother, and despite all of that, and despite all of the eerie situations surrounding the doll, Donna refused to get rid of her doll, and this was proven to be a very terrible decision. Now, Lou, he spent the night one night, and it was, in the beginning like any ordinary night, but by the end of the night, it would be a night that he never forgot. So Lou, after him and the girls hanging out and all that good stuff, he went to sleep. And suddenly he was woken up out of his sleep as if he had a nightmare or something, but couldn't really remember it, but he was just woken up out of his deep sleep. And he was woken up in a panic. But not only was he in this panic, he couldn't move. When he woke up, his heart was pounding and he was unable to move, as if he was paralyzed. And he noticed something was off. Something felt different. I mean, his heart was about to pound out of his chest. And the fact that he couldn't move made matters even worse. So Lou, he scanned the room with his eyes. And when he scanned the room at first, he didn't see anything. Nothing looked out of the ordinary. But suddenly Lou saw Annabelle at his feet. And when Lou saw Annabelle at his feet, she began to slowly crawl up his legs. And Annabelle inched her way up to Lou's chest. Now, when she made it to Lou's chest, she stopped. She paused for a moment. And then after that pause, she began strangling Lou. Now, Lou, he was unable to move. This doll is on his chest and now strangling him. Poor Lou, he was gasping for breath. He was gasping for air. He was gasping so much to the point of asphyxiation. And poor Lou passed out. He just blacked out. Now, he blacked out, but he made it. Lou lived to see another day. But when Lou woke up, or he came through from passing out, could nobody tell Lou that was a dream. Lou was convinced, he was certain that what happened was real and something was wrong with that doll. Lou was over it and he never wanted to be around Annabelle again. I mean, poor Lou. But unfortunately, Lou didn't put his thinking cap on. Lou didn't go home at that time. And since he didn't go home, of course, this would not be his last encounter with Annabelle. Now, unfortunately, Lou stayed and he decided to prepare for a road trip with Angie the next day. Now, while he and Angie were reading over maps and preparing their trip and talking about everything they needed to do, they heard a noise. And the noise they heard sounded as if someone was breaking into the apartment. So, Lou, being the man in the situation, he decided, hey, I'm going to go investigate and check this out and see what's going on. So Lou went to investigate the sound and see what was going on. And when he went to investigate, he realized the sound was coming from one of the bedrooms. So he began to creep quietly and slowly toward the noise. And he crept slowly enough to wait for the noise to stop. And then once the noise stopped, he crept slowly into the room. Lou crept on in the room. And once Lou made it into the room, there was no one there. There was no one there except Annabelle. Now, Annabelle appeared to be tossed on the floor in the corner, and nothing else was out of place. But Lou, he went ahead and he checked the room to make sure that there were no intruders and that everything was okay. And he saw no one. But he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was behind him. And Lou, he quickly spun around. And no one was there. But he had that feeling. And then within a split second, Lou felt a pain and he began grabbing his chest. And Lou didn't realize that his shirt was stained with blood and he was cut. Lou quickly opened his shirt and he discovered 7 claw marks. 3 that were vertical and 4 that were horizontal scratches. The scratches, not only did they hurt, but they were on fire, as if they were burned into his chest. But they didn't take long to heal. Almost instantly, when he decided to show Annie what had happened, the scratches were almost healed. And by the second day, they were completely gone. They were gone, but Lou would never forget the pain that he felt when he received those scratches. So, as time passed, and They went on about their day. More and more and more. More and more unexplainable things happened, of course. Annabelle was still on the loose. Now soon, Donna began to believe the spirit which possessed Annabelle was not that of a young girl. I mean, with everything happening, she just could not wrap it around her head that this was a young, innocent 7-year-old spirit. And she started to feel as if it was a demon instead. A demon who behaved in an inhuman manner. Now, after Lou's attack, Donna, she felt it was time to seek expert advice. So she reached out to an Episcopal priest named Father Hagen. Now, Father Hagen, he felt as if the issue was more of a spiritual matter. So he contacted a higher authority within the church. He contacted Father Cook. And Father Cook immediately contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, Ed and Lorraine, they took an immediate interest in the case. And they contacted Donna to learn more about Annabelle. Now, Ed and Lorraine, they spoke to Donna, Angie, and Lou. And after speaking with Donna, Angie, and Lou, Ed and Lorraine immediately knew the doll itself, Annabelle, she was not possessed. But the situation was much more dire. Annabelle was not possessed, but the doll was being manipulated by an inhuman presence, a presence that was never human. Ed and Lorraine came to this conclusion because spirits, they do not possess inanimate objects such as toys or houses. They possess people. The entity that controlled Annabelle was never human, so it has the ability to attach itself to any place or object. Now, the entity, it simply manipulated the doll and created an illusion of Annabelle being alive, so that way it could get recognition. And Annabelle, she was simply a gateway used before the entity possessed the human host, which was the ultimate end goal. Now, the entity in this case, the inhuman demonic spirit, it was simply completing the infestation stage of the phenomena which took place before it took a human host. There are several stages that must take place before the entity or inhuman spirit can take a human host. Now, the first stage was when it began to move the doll around the apartment. This was the teleportation stage, in which it's done to arouse the curiosity of the occupants in a hope that they would give it some recognition, which they did. Now, once the entity gained this recognition that it wanted, they made a crucial mistake by bringing the medium in to communicate with it. So once the entity could communicate with the women, it preyed upon their emotional vulnerabilities. It preyed upon their vulnerabilities by pretending to be a harmless 7-year-old girl. And the worst part of it all is that Donna, she gave the entity permission to stay. Now, y'all see why I said nope. Go on into the light earlier? Because you never know what entity or what demon you're speaking with. You can't trust it. But when Donna gave the entity permission to stay, this was also used as permission to haunt them. Now, the second stage was for the entity to instill fear. And of course, it accomplished this by the weird movements of the doll, through the handwritten notes that they discovered, the symbolic drops of blood found on the doll, and the attack on poor little Lou. Poor Lou. Now, the scratches that were put upon Lou, they were actually the mark of the beast. And the final stage would have been complete human possession. Now, if the entity had continued on for another 2 or 3 weeks, then it would have completely possessed or killed one or all of the occupants within the home. Now, Ed and Lorraine, They conducted a thorough investigation, and at the conclusion of their investigation, they had Father Cook conduct a recitation of an exorcism blessing to cleanse the apartment. Now, according to Ed, the cleansing or Episcopal blessing is a wordy 7-page document that does not expel evil entities at all, but instead it fills the home with the power of, God and positivity. And after the home was cleansed, Donna's scared now. Donna requested for the Warrens to take Annabelle with them. And the Warrens, they obliged. And they took Annabelle with them when they left. But it doesn't stop there. Because on the Warrens' way home with Annabelle, she was sitting in the back seat. Ed became suspicious. And he said he would not take the interstate, which was a smart idea. He said he would not take the interstate because he just did not trust it. And he was concerned the inhuman spirit was still residing within the doll. And like I said, Ed's suspicions, they were correct. Because on the way home, they began to experience the vicious hatred from Annabelle. With every dangerous curve the couple met in the road, the car swerved and stalled, and each corner caused the car's power steering and brakes to go out. Now, repeatedly, they barely escaped collision with other cars and other objects. Things got so bad. Ed, he reached into the back seat, into his black bag, and grabbed a bottle of holy water. And he doused Annabelle, making a cross with the water. And after Ed did this, the disturbances, they calmed down and they stopped for the time being. And the couple was able to make it home. But once they made it home and got inside and got settled, Ed, he set Annabelle in a chair next to his desk. And once he set her in that chair next to his desk, Annabelle began to levitate. She levitated several times before just falling limp to the floor. He put her back. But as the weeks passed, Annabelle, she began showing up in different rooms of the Warrens' home. And there were instances where the Warrens were away, and when they were away from home, they had Annabelle locked up in the outer office building. But when they returned, Annabelle would be back within the main part of the home, sitting comfortably within Ed's recliner, pretty much greeting them once they opened the door. So as soon as they opened the door, the first thing they saw was Annabelle sitting up in there in Ed's recliner facing them. Now, I ain't gonna lie to y'all. I probably wouldn't even went in the house. I would have just probably let Annabelle have it. I opened that door and that dog sitting there looking at me like, come on in. And I know I done locked her somewhere else and ain't nobody else been in my house. Annabelle, you can have it, boo. But the Warrens, they ain't me. Let's continue. But Annabelle, she also had a strong dislike for clergymen. There was one instance where Father Jason Bradford, a Catholic exorcist, he visited the Warrens. And during his visit, he came upon Annabelle sitting there in a chair, minding her business. But, Father Bradford, he decided to go up to Annabelle. He picked her up and he said to Annabelle, You're just a rag doll, Annabelle. You can't hurt anyone. Then he tossed her back into the chair. When Father Bradford did this, Ed stated, That's one thing you better not say. Father Bradford left the home about an hour or so later. But before he left, Lorraine pled with him to be careful. Lorraine felt a tragedy upon the priest, but he had to go on about his way. Now, a few hours after the priest left, the Warrens received a call from Father Bradford, and he informed them that his brakes too went out. And not only his brakes go out, they went out on a busy intersection, and he barely escaped a fatal accident with his life. But that fatal accident did cost him his vehicle. Now, many more events occurred over the years. So the Warrens, they had a special case built for Annabelle. And the special case housed Annabelle within their occult museum. And this was the museum where Annabelle resided until recently. But before we get into recent events, we must talk about an eerie and unexplained event that took place involving a young man who dared to taunt Annabelle at the museum. Now, Annabelle, once in her special case, she no longer moved or caused any disturbances. But one day, a young man visited a museum on a motorcycle with his girlfriend. Now, Ed, he told the young man and his girlfriend all about the story of Annabelle and all about her past. And the young man, after hearing the story, he began banging on Annabelle's case aggressively and stating, if she could put scratches on people, I want to be scratched too. Now, Ed told the young man, son, you need to leave. After he did all of that, and Ed, he did put him out. But on the young man's way home, he and his girlfriend, they were making fun of Annabelle. And while they were making fun of Annabelle, he lost control of his motorcycle and he flew head first into a tree. The young man, he lost his life instantly, but his girlfriend survived. She survived, but she was hospitalized for over a year. And when she was able to explain what happened, she said that they were laughing about Annabelle and they lost control of the motorcycle. And Ed, he always warned, do not challenge evil. No man is more powerful than Satan. And Ed, now his warning about Annabelle, it was honored for many, many years. But we know Ed and Lorraine have both passed on. Ed's warnings were honored until recently. For those that do not know, there is another Annabelle movie coming out. So the NESPR decided that it would be a good idea to take Annabelle on tour. We're not talking about the porcelain Annabelle from the other movies. No, I'm talking about the real Annabelle. The actual Raggedy Ann doll from the Warrens Occult Museum. The one that was in the special case with a sign stating, warning, positively do not open. Well, not only did they move her and open the case, but they had a new case made for her. One in which they said is more suited to move her around. Now, she's only handled by Daniel Riviera. And Daniel, he's the senior head investigator for the NESPR. And when she is handled or moved, Mr. Daniel, now he wears gloves with crosses on them, and the Saint medals are in the fingertips. Now, Annabelle, she's now on what they call the Devils on the Run tour. They had the nerve to name the tour Devils. My goodness. But she's on this tour. And she's visited several places. She's visited the West Virginia State Penitentiary, San Antonio, Texas, and Louisiana. Now, Annabelle, she resided in New Orleans on May the 13th and May the 14th for an event. And she left around May 15th. But what else happened in New Orleans around this time? Let's see. The Nottoway Plantation, which was one of the biggest plantations, it burned down. And not only did it burn down, but the fire, it was put out. Firemen left. They thought they had put it out. They went on about their way. But after all of that, it sparked up again. And not only did it spark up again, the cause of the fire is still unknown. And some people who were outside watching the building burn, they said that you could see spirits walking within the fire. It looked like people walking within the fire as it burned. But we knew no one was in there. But not only did the plantation burn down, But between the wee hours of the night, around about the 16th, late in the 15th, around the wee hours of the 16th of May, 2025, 10 inmates escaped from a New Orleans jail. Not one, not two, not three, but 10. 10 dangerous criminals, and several are accused of unaliving people. Now let that sink in for a moment before we move on. Now some say it's a coincidence, but I'm not a part of the some. And I have a very hard time believing in coincidences, especially coincidences like this. Now sometimes, in my opinion, we just need to leave well enough alone, because eventually man will be his own destruction. And well, that brings us to the end of today's chat. I will be dropping a video on the Nottoway Plantation, and I'll be dropping that pretty soon, so please be on the lookout. And please like this video. Likes are free and they help to keep us in the algorithm. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share the video if you enjoyed it. And until next time, peace, love, and blessings.